Dr. Joanna Howe! Like a night show host or something. Thank you for being here. I just saw you in Adelaide.
Oh, I know. You've been everywhere. And can I just say something about Jason?
Yes.
So when I met my husband, he didn't know he was going to be my husband yet. But when I kissed him, I said, that's my first kiss, and now we have to get married. I was 21. And he just walked away because he was like, that's so intense. But then we were doing a vocation thing where we had to be single for 2 years, and then we were long distance because he lived in Adelaide, I lived in Sydney. And in order to kind of be really committed to chastity, every month that we would visit, we would watch you and Kristalina, the video, the high school presentation, because it would just give us that inspiration. So like I was so excited. I love you, Matt, but Jason.
No, listen. I understand, because whenever I'm tempted to sexual impurity, I also think about Jason. And it goes right away. That's really good. So who are you?
Okay,
Tell us a bit.
My name is Jo. I'm married to James. He finally got there. And we have 5 kids aged between 3 and 12. Actually, she's turned 13 today on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. So she was born in Oxford when I was doing my PhD. Her middle name is Immaculate. And and I'm a professor of law at Adelaide University. And I guess the reason I really wanted to talk to you guys is because a couple of years ago, a call was placed on my heart when the South Australian Parliament was voting on an abortion bill that would allow abortion right up until birth and for any reason. And, at that point, I was like very secure in my job. I was an associate professor of law. We had a mortgage. I had these kids. I think I had 5 at that point. And I did feel this stirring of, I need to do something. I'm feeling called to do something, and it's really scary, actually. Like, you just feel a little bit like I do now, intimidated by the audience and just like, oh my goodness. But over time, it built, and I decided I spoke to my husband and the kids. The 3-year-old wasn't very helpful, but the older ones gave some good advice. And basically, we did discern. And we jumped in, though, in terms of me going out on social media, speaking to the Australian people on the issue of abortion every single day, even though I had... And, I knew it was career suicide and social suicide, but I also knew that I had to trust that this call had been given to me and I had to follow it. So I actually didn't know how to post on socials. I'd had a Facebook account when I was 20 and let it go because I found it inspired feelings of jealousy and competitiveness in me. And so I thought, I just don't want to have anything to do with that. So my husband would actually film me, post it, and would write the bits together. And eventually I learned how to use my phone, so I can do it now. But, it's really amazing because in 18 months I've reached 4 million Australians. And so I see the power of... Because I actually feel like, I don't know what you guys think, but I feel like in our country, especially with young people, we're so scared on this issue. First of all, there's a huge lack of awareness. People don't realise you can have abortion right up until birth for any reason, wall to wall. Like in America, there's only 8 states with laws as extreme as Australia's. And, we've killed full-term babies at 37 weeks for any reason, so it's full-on stuff. But I feel like our generation, we're too scared to speak up because we're afraid of, what will it look like for me? What will it look like for my career and for my relationships with my family and my friends? And so I really wanted, your advice to all of us around, this is the biggest moral imperative of our generation. Just while we've been here today at the Purpose Conference, 240 Australian children in utero have been killed. And every year it's 88,000, so leading cause of death. So what's the call for each of us, sitting here today? What is it we need to do?
I think you'll have a much better answer than me, but I'll begin by saying that I think we really have to view this as a spiritual war and a clash between light and darkness. And I wasn't joking when I said abortion is like a sacrifice to the demon Moloch. And, I think we're currently, me and a friend of mine, Father Jason Sharon, are in the process of praying about, and he's spearheading this, building a gigantic shrine in Pittsburgh, or outside of Pittsburgh, to pay tribute to the Blessed Mother for the overturning of Roe versus Wade. When Roe versus Wade was overturned, he called me and he says, Matt, we got to do something for the Blessed Mother. What do you have in mind? He said he wants to build a $100 million shrine. And he said, how many rosaries were offered for the overturning of this? What are we going to do to thank our mother? So I really think the spiritual element has to be placed front and center.
I think one of the faults of the pro-life movement is focused so much on the supply of abortion and very little time on the demand for abortion. And what I mean by that is, when I was a college student, I started doing sidewalk counseling in front of an abortion clinic in Pittsburgh. And for 3 years, I stood in front of the abortion clinic and I talked to women who were 45 minutes away from getting an abortion. And I just started feeling late. Like, why am I meeting this woman who's having an abortion in 45 minutes when she's 20-something years old? Why couldn't I have met her when she was 15 or 16? Because maybe if I had talked to her about chastity then, she never would have dated this creep to begin with and be in this difficult situation today. So I felt like I was almost like standing on the banks of a flooded river, throwing sandbags on it when there's a dam broken a quarter mile upstream, and if I could just go plug the dam, then I wouldn't have to do this for the rest of my life. And so, not to undermine the importance of those who are doing crisis pregnancy work, because it's an essential thing, but to me, the supply of abortion is one thing, but if we can eliminate the demand, which is unchastity, then supply won't be an issue. And so I think what we have to do is wed more closely pro-life to pro-love. And until we effectively do that, we're just throwing sandbags.
I also think we have to show a more positive view of motherhood. So I feel like I read recently that this, tech founder, she's like, I had 2 abortions for my career. And I'm like, I'm a career woman. I'm a professor of law. And I've had 5 kids in like a decade. It's doable. But it takes my husband to go, I'm going to do a day a week. Because he has to come to the party. It takes like young people from church helping out with babysitting. It takes my kids learning to be autonomous. I feel like, I watched this movie, Bad Mums, the other day. If you haven't seen it, don't see it. It's a terrible movie. It should just be called Bad Movie, but it's called Bad Mums. And like in the movie, there's this whole rant about how motherhood just like ruins your life. And I feel like motherhood, just like sort of being religious is a rebellious act, I feel like motherhood is a rebellious act, and we need to portray and empower women to see it as like this is actually our unique calling, that when we're mothers, we're not destroying everything about ourselves. We can actually, like my deepest, like work is satisfying, but nothing compares with motherhood,
And that's what's more important, it's more important to be than to do. And so the most important thing that you can do for the pro-life movement is to be the vocation that God has called you to be. Because G.K. Chesterton said the family is a cell of resistance to oppression. And the reason why the family is so much under attack is because the family is the weapon. Because by what means did God use to redeem humanity? A little holy family. And God doesn't change his ways. And so I think what's needed more than anything is more holy families. That's what's needed. You think of there's a Top Gun movie with Tom Cruise a summer or 2 ago, and the whole plot of the movie was to destroy the weapon of the enemy. That's what the whole movie was about. And to me, that's the end game of what the devil wants to do. Just destroy the weapon of the enemy. What's God's weapon? Holy families. And so that's the biggest thing we have in our arsenal, is the vocation to which God has called each of us. And so before we go do, he's calling us first to be.
I did 2 episodes recently that would be very helpful. I'm convinced that abortion is the fruit of feminism, which I've come to believe recently is evil root and branch. And if that sounds over the top, I'd recommend people check out an interview that just released today on Pints with Aquinas with Dr. Carrie Grass, who has a PhD, philosopher. She did a deep dive into feminism, expecting that the first wave would have been fine, but then it went off the rails or something. And what she found was something very, very different. Just to give one example, Mary Wollstonecraft is said to be the mother of feminism, but it was really her son-in-law, Percy Shelley, who was the fuel behind feminism. And Percy Shelley once tried to summon up a devil in a crypt and then believed that Milton's Satan in Paradise Lost was actually the hero. So that's how it begins. And what you find throughout the history of feminism is this trifecta of this desire to destroy the patriarchy by destroying marriage. So free love is something that has always been promoted, which is a silly way of saying it. It's not free, it's not love, it's like enslaved passion. Spiritualism and the occult is found throughout the whole thing. Why? Because often in spiritualism and the occult, you have a woman and a high priestess, so this desire to overthrow the male hierarchy, and then of course trying to overthrow men in government. And so, I think it's the bitter fruits of feminism, which is hateful towards women. So I think you're exactly right that doing flows from being, and so we have to reorient things to show the beauty of motherhood. Yeah, because especially in this day and age. So what were they talking about the other day? Dinks or something? Double income, no kids.
Yeah, it's a lovely acronym online,
Yeah.
but it's poverty, because you have these people being like, look, we got all these pictures of us hanging out in the Turks and Caicos Islands, and now we're doing this. We don't need to worry about kids. We got double income. It's like, okay, what are you going to do with all those Instagram photos when you're like 75 years old and nobody's visiting you? And all of your friends have grandchildren and they're celebrating all of this stuff. And what are you just going to go back to your phone and, hey, that was great? It's poverty. It's the poverty of affluence.
I'll let you get the last word before we wrap up. But one final thing I would say is, we don't want to fall into the trap of having to pretend all the time that I just love being a mother, don't you know? Because being a mother's bloody
it's really hard sometimes.
But I think it's really important that we have friends that we journey with who we share our struggles with. But that we really have to show the world that motherhood and fatherhood and like loving your wife, loving your husband is...
Well, it's ultimately really fulfilling and deeply meaningful. Like, I think when you lean into that vocation, that's when you are, the glory of God made fully alive. I know you guys have been very profound. I just want to say, can you guys follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Dr. Joanna Howe? Tell your friends, because we need to build our pro-life movement. When we become a tidal wave is when we will defeat abortion in our country. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.